Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of SidTalks. Today I have a very interesting guest for all of you, and we'll just be joined by her, and we are also waiting for people to join. Hello everyone, keep joining.
Hi. Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
hi
Sid.
Apeksha.
So nice to be here.
Hi. So nice to have you. Am I audible?
Yes. Am I
Yes, yes, yes,
clear? Okay.
yes.
And
Great.
just pray that
People are
my,
still joining.
sorry, just pray that my
Yeah.
internet doesn't mess up because when I did the live with Anjali, I was like a pixelated
I
ghost.
remember.
Hi,
I
guys.
remember.
So Andaleeb is here, Shilpa is here, Yash Char Divar. Nice,
We
nice.
have Market My Book as is here as well.
Oh, wow, nice. Hey, Lipika.
So let's start.
Sure.
Great. So Andalip says she's saying that I was just thinking about that. Great. So if that happens, we'll call this a Lego Live, and
Yeah,
we'll continue.
will do.
Great. So all of you who have joined us, we have with us Apeksha Rao. She's the author of Along Came a Spider and its prequel, The Itsy Spider, which is India's first young adult spy thriller, and it is published by Tree Shade Books. The prequel is self-published by her on Kindle Direct Publishing. Uh, Apeksha wrote her first story at the age of 7 for Tinkle, and her skill and experience in homeopathy has made her a keen observer of human emotions, and that has helped us create the characters. And as we'll discuss, the characters are very, very interesting.
Okay.
She's a Mumbaikar born and bred, and she comes from a family of doctors. She's also a diehard foodie who's looking for the best Vada Pav in Bangalore. And she was also a part of season 8 of Anita's Attic, a mentorship program by the renowned author Anita Nath.
Yes.
Welcome, Apeksha. Welcome to the live session.
Thank you so much, Sid. It's an honor being here with your listeners and fans.
Thank you. So let's start with the very first thing that I noticed in your bio is that you started writing at a very young age. So would you like to tell us about the story that you submitted to Tinkle?
Oh, that was a very childish story called The Brave Orphan. And as usual, if that happens even today, I suck at titles. I suck at giving titles. So I showed the story to my friends, and they said, okay, there's an orphan in here who's brave, so we'll just call it The Brave Orphan. So it was this girl, and everything about it was a cliche. It was about this girl called Guduma, who was a good girl, and she was an orphan, and she was part of a, I mean, she was being raised by an aunt who was not very nice to her, and blah blah. This that it's a very simple story. So it got rejected, and I didn't feel the pinch of it. I didn't feel bad because I didn't think at that time that rejection was something to be bad, to feel bad about. I was just very excited that I got a handwritten letter from Uncle Pi. And unfortunately, I don't have that letter anymore. When you're moving houses, I think it got misplaced. But for
Yeah.
years, that was my most prized possession. And
Yeah. In fact,
yeah,
yeah. Continue. Continue. Yeah.
so I still remember fighting with my mother when I realized that I couldn't find it. I was like, "How could you lose it?" And she's like, "Your letter. You should have taken care of it." So
Yeah. Yeah. Because Tinkle was something that's been a part of most of us growing up.
yes,
So, just a question that's unrelated. Which one is your favorite character from the Tinkle comic?
Dub Dub. I used to love Dub Dub, the crocodile. His name was so cute, and the poor guy was so dumb and sweet. And though he tried to be mean, it would always fail. I just loved him, and Supandi as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
In fact, I remember book fairs is one place, that when we have Amar Chitrakatha. That's one place I've always been there.
Hmm.
So, yeah, because when I read this anecdote in your bio, I was like, this question has to be asked
Yeah.
because Tinkle and writing a story for Tinkle is something that
Yeah.
we all have done.
Yeah, exactly. We all began that way, right? Who's your favorite
Yeah.
character? Who's your favorite character from Tinkle?
Uh, Mine is Tupandi and Shikari Shambhu.
Ah, yeah, Shikari Shambhu as well.
And
Nasiruddin Hoja.
because, yes. In fact, I have these bobbleheads of both of them, and I broke
Okay.
one of them. So I actually
Oh,
went to the book fair to replace one of them.
you get these? Oh, wow. Even I want. I want those as well.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, sure.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
So, so you started at the age of 7, and right now you have one full-length novel and a short novella published.
Hmm.
So, how was the journey like
So,
from that to here?
so what happened was when I was growing up, I wasn't really writing too many stories. So what I was writing was I was writing first recitation competitions for my school. I used to write scripts for people. So I was a script writer in school. I used to write plays, skits, storytelling competitions. Even when I was in junior college, my English teacher used to send kids to my house saying, "Apeksha se jaake script leke aao." So that was all I did in college. And even in homeopathic college, I used to do a lot of, so I used to act in plays and scripts. And, we used to have this thing, very interesting thing called drug dramatization. So basically, our homeopathic medicines, you can turn them into people. Like you can, they'll give you a full picture of a human being for whom that drug will be used. So we used to do that drug dramatization. So that used to be real fun because some of these drugs are like the people who, I mean, the symptoms that they use for it's wonderful and it's really nice to enact. So we used to win inter-college competitions with that. And I never really took writing seriously. There was one phase in my life when I was hooked onto Mills and Boons, and I tried to write in the format of a Mills and Boon. And actually, now that I look back on it, that was fairly decent. Like now, if I try to write romance, I totally suck at it. Okay, so I can write a torture scene without breaking a sweat. From the serial killer's point of view, that too, without breaking a sweat. But you ask me to write a kissing scene, oh way, I'm like done. It's very stressful for me. But that was like because that was partly plagiarism. You read so many books and you just try to distill whatever distill the formula into it. So apart from that, I didn't write earlier. And then I started blogging very slowly, like with gaps of a few months and stuff. But in 2016, I had twins. And I think some screw went loose in my head and after delivery. And I remember I used to be, you wake up at night to feed the kids and all, and I would be rocking a baby to sleep on one side and tapping away at the iPad on the other side. And my husband is like, shouldn't you sleep? Where my mother has this thing, you should always sleep when the baby sleeps. And my husband is like, you're sleepless, you're grumpy. Why don't you sleep? Because I have to bear the brunt of it. I'm like, no, I want to write. So that's how I started. And I started writing I started blogging short stories and flash fiction. And that's how it developed.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect, and I did not know about this drug dramatization thing. This sounds really interesting
It's
because
fun.
I used to imagine medical with that scalpel and blood and
Yeah,
everything.
homeopathy is different. Homeopathy has all of that plus the human touch to it. So
Yeah, and you don't tell the name of the medicine that you're giving. That's a secret.
yeah, that's the judges will. So if they can identify the drug, that's a good thing. And
Okay.
so the judges are homeopathic doctors, senior doctors. So if they identify what drug you're portraying and if they feel, you've got the essence of the drug really right, then you win.
We have a comment from Andalip. She's saying Apeksha is underselling herself.
Why? Okay, okay. She's talking about the romance part. But Andalip, seriously, writing a serial killer mystery is way easy, much easier than writing a romance. So all you guys who write romance, like pair, pailagu, because I really find it difficult.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you wrote your story in bits and parts. So,
Yes.
how is your writing process? Because when once you had to start writing a novel, what was the process? Was it the same, or did you like
No,
have a comprehensive process?
it was very different because I had never written a novel, And writing, like it seems like it's not much. 50,000 words is not much. But when you start writing, you realize how much of there is to it. Those pages don't fill themselves. Those words don't just come. You have to write something that makes sense. You have to write something that, and I've always felt if something doesn't add to the story, I'm not keeping it. So, it was a very difficult process because I'd written. So, how I started writing was I started writing about this group of teen spies called the Blackbirds. And initially, I was focusing mainly on the missions that they were doing. So, it was all about the missions. So, it was about this group of teen spies going and doing things. And, you know, so, but slowly I started focusing on the characters. And then there was this. So I wanted to write about a character called Tina, but this Samira kept popping up and insisting I write about her. I'm like, fine, I'll write about you and get you out of the way. Because the focus for me was Tina. Because I'd written about
Okay.
Tina Rane, I had written about her as a child in an orphanage. So
Okay.
that was one of the first pieces of flash fiction that I had written about a child in an orphanage. And I wanted to make her into a spy. That was to be the ultimate goal. But then Samira kept popping up, so I wrote about her first. And hopefully the next story in line has to be Tina's. So it was very difficult for me. So I tried from 2016. I've been trying to write the book. I tried NaNoWriMo 2016, 17, both tanked because also partly because my kids kept falling sick, so I wasn't in the mental space to write. But 2018, by 2018 I had half the book finished, and then and also Andalib knows this, and I'm the queen of rewriting. So I have no shame in abandoning 30,000 words and saying, okay, I'm going to start from scratch. I think uh, I need to be dragged to the finish line because I'd rather go back and rewrite everything. So I did that a lot of times. POV, point of view, first person, then delete everything and rewrite in third person, then say this doesn't work and then rewrite it again in first person. So it took me a long time to get all of that in place. Probably also because it was my first attempt at writing long form. These are probably the
Right.
teething troubles that happen when you haven't found your voice yet. So to find my voice, it took me quite a long time. Then when I moved to Bangalore in 2018, I decided to you know just do it. If I don't do it now, it'll never happen. And I didn't want to become 80 years old and regret that I had this book in mind and I didn't write it. So that to NaNoWriMo 2018, I wrote 50,000 words, and that's how it happened.
Okay. So what's with Bangalore and writers? Because a lot of writers live in Bangalore. Is that there's something about the city?
Could be. Also, it could be that a lot of people give up. They move to Bangalore because their hubbies. At least this has happened with me and a lot of people I know. They've moved to Bangalore. Not all of them are writers, but they moved to Bangalore because their husband's got a job there. And then, you give up your job and you move, and then you find you have time on your hand and you want to explore all your interests. So that works a
Yeah.
lot. And also
We
there
have
is
a
there
question.
is magic in the air in Bangalore. It makes you creative.
I think so. There's something there because a lot of people live in Bangalore who write amazing books. So that there is something about the city, I think. There is
Also,
a question.
no, no.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah, yeah. Go
there
ahead.
is something about the city in that in Mumbai, you'll never sit at home. You'll always be roaming around. In Bangalore, roaming around is not possible. Like, at least
That's true.
if you're staying in North Bangalore, it's a headache to move out of the house. So if you're stuck in the house, then you start thinking about what else you can do and you start writing.
That's true. Yeah. So we have a question from Shantini Banerjee.
Hi, Shantini.
How did you
She's a friend,
launch yourself?
okay,
Ah,
from Anita's Attic.
uh,
She's a batchmate.
okay. So we don't have pre-prepared questions, right?
No, no.
Okay.
None.
So the question is, how did you launch yourself and how was the experience?
So one is I was fairly lucky. Okay, I was fairly lucky in that I was part of a very supportive blogging circle. So they were. So you know what happens when you meet people, you're blogging, they're reading your blogs, and they give you feedback, and then you make connections, right? Like friends and stuff. So one of my friends suggested I was actually looking to KDP it, but she was like, "Why don't you reach out to a literary agent?" And she'd heard of Suhail Mathur, so she said, "Why don't you reach out to him?" So I did that, and Suhail accepted the manuscript at in the first. email is he liked it and he said, yeah, let's go ahead with it. And then once they finished their vetting process and editing whatever they felt was needed, which took a few months, he pitched it to a couple of publishers and T-Shirt picked it up fairly quickly. So that part of it wasn't very difficult. The difficult part began afterwards. So
Yeah, in fact, launching your book during the lockdown, because
it was a
I
nightmare.
remember us having a conversation around May that
Yes.
your book is coming out, and then
Yeah.
it got postponed.
Yeah.
So how was that feeling and how was that experience?
Oh, that was miserable, but uh, I kept telling myself that for me, it's just one book. There are people who are losing their lives. So, prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. But it was a very scary thing because the whole game changed, right? People stopped going to
Right,
bookstores. So even publishers and distributors, it was a first time experience for them. They didn't know what was going to work, what wasn't. And Reshade was very supportive. They're like, the minute we get a chance, we're putting this book out. But even they had to figure out whether the book will sell.
right.
So I think in March, the book was supposed to go to press, and the day it was supposed to go to press, the Prime Minister announced a nationwide lockdown. And
Yeah,
printing presses, we didn't even expect printing presses to shut down. I mean, what I don't know what I was thinking about what a lockdown would be like. Why would printing presses be open if everybody's sitting at home?
right.
But that came as a big surprise. And then they didn't open for so long. There was paper shortage. These things we don't realize. Before the lockdown
Correct.
happened, there was a horrible shortage of paper. And, the operations manager at Trichet was telling me they're actually trying to source paper. यहाँ से paper मिलेगा वहाँ से. So these things nobody anticipated. And then the lockdown
Exactly.
happened and the situation didn't get better at all. So uh, I think we were thinking of, we thought we could go for a June release despite everything. And I started promoting, and then the printers said, no, that won't happen now because, they were very short staffed, and then the distributors were short staffed. So that's when I came out with the novella because I'd built up so much of a marketing momentum, I didn't want to lose that. So,
Right. Yeah, I remember, that in that momentum you launched that, before the book comes out, you can read the prequel.
yes,
And
yes.
that was an interesting, aspect of the whole book launch. And then the book launch happened from your home.
Yes,
So,
yes. I think it was
yeah,
one of the first few books launched in the
yes.
pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the moment when we started these lives and the book
Yes.
launches from home and all that.
Yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah.
everything that could go wrong that day went wrong with my book launch. With thanks to my internet, I was trying to do a Zoom call and live stream it to Facebook, and it just wouldn't happen. And I had Siddharth, Jain, my publishers, and Suhail and Lipika, everyone waiting to go live. And I think I wasted a lot of that time, but they were so patient, incredibly patient. Thanks to all of them.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, you were writing about Tina and then Samira came into the picture. So, for you, do the characters actually come first, or does the plot actually come first?
In this case, the characters came first. Actually, no, fair. The protagonist usually always comes first. You start thinking about a character. Maybe it might not turn out the way you were thinking, but a character stays in your mind. Like currently, I'm writing a thriller, and the idea of that princess Padmaja kept coming into my mind in various forms, and then I, eventually decided, okay, this is what I'm going to write. But I get
Okay.
ideas very weirdly because once I even got an idea in a dream. And while that
Okay.
happens a lot that you dream about it, when you wake up, it's gone. And you're really bugged because in
Right.
your dream, it made such fabulous sense. And you're like, this ye to bestseller hai. But then when you wake up, it's all gone. But that day, that thing stayed with me. And I remember that was a phrase that came into my mind. It was a
Okay.
Marathi phrase, kai sundar zod pa means what a sweet couple. One girl was talking about one elderly couple. What a sweet couple. And then, it was her story. And what I did the next morning, I had a flight to catch, early morning flight. I grabbed a notebook and after security, I sat and wrote down everything, outlined the whole thing. And I made sure I wrote the phrase down because, if it goes, it goes.
Exactly. That actually happens because you forget things and then they come back to you. That's a very difficult process, I think.
Yeah.
So, how did the story turn into a young adult book, young adult spy thriller? How did this concept, the entire concept came about?
So this I've been saying since been promoting my book, that one of my biggest and most enduring teenage fantasies was that I was a teen spy. So, because I was a very dowdy, stumbling, clumsy teenager, and I should tell myself, I used to console myself, this is not who I really am. Under all this soda bottle glasses and frizzy hair and horrible clothes, I'm a hotshot spy. And one day, someone is going to come and tell me, you've done your mission really well, you've accomplished it well, and thank you, Agent Apeksha. And I'll throw off my disguise and I'll be this cool spy, and I'll go kickboxing people and drop kicking people out of the building and stuff. Especially people used to make fun of me. So that's how I think that that teenager stayed in my heart, and I still am like quite a teenager. I behave. Some people might call it immature, which I don't agree. It is young at heart and fresh-minded. So
That's a good phrase. That's a good phrase.
so so when I started, and I was even into reading a lot of YA literature. So in fact, I had a phase where I only read YA for a few years, couple of years. So when I started writing, YA was the first thing that came to me, that I wanted to write about teenagers.
So, when we say YA, what does YA actually encompass, or what does YA actually mean?
When you
Because
say
it's a phrase that has been abused as well.
yes, so age-wise, you would say about 13 to 21, 20, 13 to 20, 21, you could at max stretch it to. But now this is the thing that makes YA very attractive to adults, because the topics that we discuss are not necessarily topics that a child would feel like. But see, these are issues that they deal with as they're growing up. So they're partly adult and partly child. But a lot of those issues are things that even an adult might face. Whether it is gender identity, sexual orientation, bullying, all of this is something that
Right,
all of us face even now as adults. Discrimination,
right,
something as simple as you're not allowed to follow your dreams. That even someone
correct.
of my age in India can face that, male or female, right? So we identify
Right.
with those topics, and children identify as well, and teenagers identify with those topics as well. So the protagonist will always be a teenager. So
Okay.
essentially 13 to 19, safely you can call it young adult, a teenager, but you can also drag it up to 21, which then becomes
Okay.
new adult as well. So that line
Okay.
is a little hazy, young adult and late young adult and new adult.
Right.
But essentially, the protagonist is a teenager who could be facing issues that might, like in our case, a group of teenagers who are doing things that no teenager would ever do, right? No matter how much we want it
Right.
to be true, no teenager is going to go and dismantle a bomb. So
Right.
that kind of a thing.
Okay. So, the story of this particular book is set in
Yes,
Mumbai.
yes.
So, was that a conscious choice, or was Samira actually a proper Mumbaikar and it had to be set?
So see, one is that I write what I know, right? So I grew up in Mumbai. I was
Okay.
born and brought up in Mumbai, and I hadn't lived in any other city until then. So I only knew Mumbai. So I knew that if I had to, show the city, then Mumbai was the best bet, because that's all I knew. And Samira, so I made Samira also a character who's a typical character, in that she's from there's this place called Dadar in Mumbai, and there's something called
Right.
Hindu Colony,
Right.
which is full of
Right.
Maharashtrian Brahmins. So I made her from that kind of a family. So I gave her a grandmother who was a typical Cobra. You call this Kokanasta Brahmin, Cobra. So typical
Okay.
Cobra grandmother. So so that's how it was set in Mumbai.
Okay. Uh, so, how was the experience? So, you have one book traditionally published from Trichet,
Hmm.
and the prequel is self-published on KD. How do the two experience actually get compared?
Both have their pluses. Okay.
Okay.
For traditional publishing, the visibility and the validation are huge. So one is that you feel validated as an author because a publisher is willing to invest time and money in you, right? So you feel that, okay, your writing is
Right.
at a certain level, and there is always a benefit of having editors. So your book goes through multiple levels of editing. So when it comes out, it's a group effort. It's not, it's your effort and the editors, and the proofreading that happens, all of that, and the cover designer. So there's a big team working with your book. In KDP, you're on your own. So if you're
Okay.
smart, you will get an editor. You will hire an editor, or you learn to edit on your own, which is difficult, which is not everyone's cup of tea. And it also takes, either you edit while you write, or it takes time to, edit your book separately. So you hire an editor and you hire a good cover designer. Then, and you're very particular about what you write. So you need to have good beta readers who will tell you your writing sucks to your face. So never have your family and friends as your beta readers, because they'll only praise it. And
Right.
when you're self-publishing a book, the onus is on you to meet the standard
Okay.
of a traditional publishing. It is definitely possible. We know so many authors who are excellent at, their books are excellent and they're self-published authors. But you have to match that standard. You have to create that gold standard for yourself and say, my book has to be of this level. Then it's brilliant. KDP is brilliant. Though you don't have the pleasure of seeing your book in your hands, you can't, you can't carry a book
Right.
around. You can't see it in bookstores, because that's validation of a different kind. The kick you get when you see someone
Right.
holding your book, if you're okay with just someone showing you a pic of your book on their phone, that's also good enough. I mean, that's
Right.
validation as
But
well.
that physical book is completely different.
Yes, yes. So
Right.
apart from that, there's nothing holding KDP back. But that apart from having said that, traditional publishing has its own kick. That you're seeing your book in bookstores, you're being invited to lit fests, and the validation of being published by a publisher is wonderful.
Right. So another thing that you mentioned, that you are not very good at uh, putting titles to your story. So the titles for both the books, was that the working title, or did that come out of multiple discussions?
So the working title was Along Came a Blackbird. So
Okay.
Along Came a Blackbird was my title because I had called the group Blackbirds. But when we pitched it as Agent Samira and something like that, because Suhail didn't feel that black people would understand what Blackbirds stand for, or whether it'll resonate with them. Then the editor at Reshade, Pritsika, she and I were discussing and we were brainstorming titles, and I was like, I didn't like the Agent Samira thing because that wasn't the feel of the book. That kind
Okay.
of made it a little younger, and because that was more like Nancy Drew and the adventure of the blah blah
Right.
blah,
Right.
that kind of a thing, which
Yes.
I didn't want. And Samira would dropkick anyone if they called her agent anything. She's not the type of girl to say agent. So Pritika and I were talking about it, and I said, okay, how about Along Came a Spider with a Y? And then she was like, that's really good. As long as you're clear about people who are going to compare it with James Patterson's Along Came a Spider. And I've had that. I've
Right.
had people asking, are you trying to write? One person even asked me, are you trying to ride on the wave of the success of that book? And I said, it's a completely different book. We have nothing in common. And mine is, his probably wasn't as relevant to his book. Mine is very relevant to my book because she's a spy who just came along and tried to get into the organization. So it's the perfect title for my book.
Yeah. And about the Itsy Bitsy Spider?
So that was much easier actually, because that Itsy Bitsy Spyder is about Samira's childhood. So she's reminiscing about her childhood, and so the small spider. So essentially, it's about the spider as a child.
Okay. Okay. So, do you think a young adult as a genre is growing in India, and what's the market for this genre?
It is growing by leaps and bounds, and there are excellent books coming out. But there is a big problem. There is a big roadblock to young adult writers in India doing as well as they should rightfully do. That is parents. Parents are the gatekeepers who buy books for children. And I've noticed this. I noticed this when I was doing Amazon marketing for the Itsy Bitsy. I tried, as an experiment for I think 10 days or 2 weeks or something. I did Amazon marketing, and initially I targeted young adult books and books that all the teenagers that I know love to read, and there were hardly any views. Then I targeted Indian authors who are classics, who parents love to
Right.
buy for their kids. I don't want to take names. They not all of them write too much young adult, but they're classics and they give gyan to kids. So they give a lot of values and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Parents love buying such books for their kids. So I started getting views from there. I think kids probably went through those recommendations, and then your ad comes there
Right.
as people who bought this also saw type of thing. So that's when I started
Yes.
getting clicks, and I realized that parents need to uh, do something about this. They need
Evolve.
to, yes. And if you're willing to buy a Harry Potter for your kid, you're not buying gyan from there. You're willing to buy a
Yeah, that's
book
true.
that is entertainment, purely entertainment. Why, when it comes to Indian books, why would you want to restrict yourself to that?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and this actually shows why we are, uh, not publishing that many YA right now.
Yes, yes.
So, if you had to choose a USP for your book, what would be it?
So for Spyder, it would be that it's the first of its kind in India, definitely. Because while you have teen detective stories and adventures, you don't have a spy story that's about girls who are
Right.
spies. That's the biggest USP. And the snark, if people
So,
like it, the snarky voice for those who like it.
yeah. So, so this was about the book, and this was about this thing. But let us move to the author now. So, when you're not writing, what are the other hobbies that you like to pursue?
All I do all day is read. So before I had children, I used to play sitar. So I learned sitar for around 10 years. And at one point I was learning like very seriously. But the trouble is that you need to do about 5 to 6 hours of riyaz every day. And that's just not possible now. So then either I'm writing or I'm reading. If I'm not playing referee
Okay.
between my kids, which now I think that has become my main occupation, I can change my profession in my bio and say referee. And
Okay.
apart from that, all I'm doing is writing and reading.
So, what are you reading currently?
Today I'm on a Georgette Hare kick. So I read about one book a day. Okay. So today I'm on a Georgette Hare kick because I wanted something very light and frivolous. And I love These Old Shades. That's a book by Georgette Hare. So I love Georgian romances. So that's a very funny book and that's my comfort read. So today is a day for comfort reading. And so that's what I'm
So,
reading.
you prefer paperbacks or Kindle?
Kindle. Kindle. Because I read,
Easy to handle.
yes, and I read at night. I read it in the dark.
Ah,
So most of my reading happens at
so
night.
yeah.
So
So, your one thing that was mentioned in your bio is that you are a foodie, a
yes,
die-hard foodie.
absolutely.
So, if a person visits Bangalore, what are the places that you swear to that you would recommend it to them?
Depends on the cuisine. If you like, I mean, everybody who comes to Bangalore eats, loves South Indian cuisine. But for the experience of it, there's a place called Airlines, which is under a banyan tree. You sit under a banyan tree and you eat, and their food is wonderful. Like dosas and stuff they're really good. But I would recommend that experience to everyone. There's something very soothing about it. You're sitting under the tree and you're eating, and it's a very old banyan tree, so it has all these hanging roots all around and my kids
Okay.
love to try to jump up and catch them. But it's wonderful. And the thing is, see, in Mumbai, there's a lot of street food, so I can take people on a street food tour over Mumbai, especially on the Western Line. But in Bangalore, I haven't explored the street food as much, probably because it's not as great as Mumbai's. So I'll be pilloried for saying this. But there's a if you like Awadhi food, there's a very nice place called the Feast India Company. Very very
Okay.
good Awadhi food. The galauti kebab and mutton biryani.
So, yeah. So the same question I will ask for Mumbai as well. since that's been a place where you have been for a long period of time.
Yes, Mumbai, you
What are the
should.
places that you would recommend?
In Mumbai, I wouldn't even bother stepping into a restaurant. I'm telling you, street food in Mumbai is to die for, and you can get something for every palate. And you should go to all the
Right.
places where there are colleges, okay, junior colleges or a professional college, because the whole area, the whole street, two streets around that area will have excellent food, junk food. So there's these 99 types of dosa walas. Now, I love the bastardized versions of dosas. So Chinese dosas and noodles and cheese, all of Maggi in the dosa. I will eat that any day. And vada pav. You get good vada pav
Right.
all over Mumbai. And of course, then you have uh, if you go to Muhammad Ali Road, you get this really tasty Muslim food, especially during Ramzan. You get
Right.
kebabs and all of that. The only place I would suggest people go to a restaurant, visit a restaurant is Britannia. Britannia is a Parsi restaurant in near Horniman Circle, and their Parsi food is brilliant to die for.
Yeah.
Now you're making
In
me
fact,
hungry.
I have been to both the cities. So,
Okay.
and so, but yet, yes, I have not been to any of the places that you have mentioned. So, those are going on the list now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So before
So,
you
we had a
visit,
couple of questions.
just
Yeah,
ping me. I'll tell you where to go.
definitely, definitely. We had a couple of questions. So,
Okay.
one is from Sandeep.
Okay.
Was publishing a short book before a full-fledged novel pre-planned?
No, Sandeep. Like I was mentioning that it was uh, it was my knee-jerk response to the situation. First, I whined a lot about the fact that my book release was being delayed, and then I realized that at some point I have to stop whining about this because there are people who are losing their lives, which is and that's a bigger issue here. So I decided to do something constructive about it, and I had a lot of backstories about Samira, which I wanted to. I was thinking of putting it out as promos or teasers, but then I realized I could build that into a book, so into a novella. So that's how I did that. It was a knee jerk, but it was very useful.
We have one more question. So it's somebody called DS Tanya 21.
Ah, Tanya,
They're
hi.
asking, yeah. So do you plan the whole book in terms of the whole story first, and then decide on the chapters, or how does this work?
So I need to plot for my peace of mind. I'm that much of a control freak that if I don't know what is happening, in every part of it, I just freak out and it drives me nuts, which then leads to so much of rewriting. So the best way to avoid all that is plot. So begin with a one-page synopsis of what the story is about, and gradually go expanding. So write a 5-page synopsis slowly, and then start plotting. Then first just I plot in blocks of 5 chapters. So first 5 chapters, what is going to
Okay.
happen? So accordingly, and then I break it down scene by scene. Now I've gone down to that. I outline every scene before I write it, so it saves a lot of headache.
Yeah, yeah. Itsy is not part two. It's the prequel to the main
Yes,
book, which is
yes,
the it's along famous spider. This was a question. Uh, so what are you working on next? You mentioned it's a thriller, but would you
yes.
like to tell us a bit about
It is a historical thriller set in the 19th century, late 19th century. It's a murder mystery in a palace. So probably next weekend or the weekend after that, we are going to have a graduation ceremony at Anita's attic, and I'm going to be reading out an excerpt from the book. So that's going to be the first look for my book, even before it's written. I'm already reading it out.
it?
So
That's going to be interesting.
yeah, so I'll share the link, of course, with you.
Definitely. So this question is answered. Tell us something about your current work in progress. When do we get to meet the spiders next?
That is, I don't know. Yeah, I'm wondering. Everybody's been telling me, put it on hold because series are not doing very well right now. And I have this book to work on right now, which it'll take me a year to write this. So maybe after a year, I'll begin writing the second book, and then we'll see how it goes. But the way publishing is going, I don't think the second book is going to be out for at least 4 years because
I think the matters have become a bit stable
no,
with
there's a
the
huge
books that are
backlog.
coming out.
There's a huge backlog. Almost a year books were
Okay.
delayed, na? So all
That's
publishers are saying it's going to go slow for the next year at least.
that's true. So, one last question. This is also something I've picked up from your bio. Have you been able to find the vada pav that you have been looking for in Bangalore?
My Vada Pav quest is jinxed, man. It is so jinxed. I found one fabulous Vada Pav place. It shut down. And this shut down way
Okay.
before the lockdown, okay? I think I just got hooked onto their Vada Pav and Jalebi, and they just upped and disappeared. I'm like calling them up, going to the place. Where are you guys? They don't even pick up the phone. Then I found a very nice place called Mumbai Local, very close to my house. The guys from Mumbai, so all their food is authentic street food from Mumbai. It was the best vada pav I've eaten in my life. And then the lockdown happened, and even he's wound up. So my quest is jinxed. Now I need to go back to
So it's
Mumbai.
basically it's only once you get to taste the flavor and it goes off.
Yeah, no, I get to taste it long enough to get hooked. So like 4 5 times
Okay.
until I'm hooked for life, and then they disappear.
So it's easier to go to Mumbai, eat and come back.
Yes.
So, thank you for joining, Apeksha. It was a wonderful conversation.
This is real
We
fun.
got to, yeah, and thankfully the net held on.
Yeah.
So we had a good
Unbelief is
video.
going to be mad at
And
me.
so this 7 p.m. time works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, thank you for joining. It was a pleasure talking about your book, uh, the different flavors of Mumbai and Bangalore, and how you plot your entire book. Uh, I'm excited about your next book, and I would love to see the trailer and the book come out real soon.
Thank you.
One thing that I wanted to mention about was the publicity for the spider, because the artwork, especially on the cover as well, it's very interesting. The way the characters have been drawn and the character posters which came up. So
Yeah.
that's something that's very interesting.
So actually, the cover was full credit to Trishade because I gave them a very clear brief saying I want this on the cover, and they delivered. So I got a wonderful cover from them, and I got the character sketches done by a friend, Dr. Vandana Nihalani. She's an artist, and she created these wonderful characters, and then I could play around with them. So I used them. I used Samira's character even for the cover of Itsy Bitsy Spider.
Right,
That cover was made by
right.
Meryl Anil, and even she delivered a fabulous cover. So, and it was a lot of fun in that the character sketches I could give teasers about each character, and that built
Right.
up a lot of interest for the book.
Yeah, that was very interesting marketing and something that related to the book as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining and thank you for taking out time for this one session.
Thank you, Siddhant, and thank you
And
for having me. It was fun talking to you.
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Hope to have you again for your next
Definitely.
book very soon.
Definitely. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you all for joining. This was Apeksha Rao. It was a wonderful session. Thank you, and do tune in for the next one next week.